Good afternoon, everyone. Is this on? I don't think so. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call to order the State Allocation Board meeting for April 20th. If you could please call the roll. Great.
Senator Hancock, Senator Liu, Senator Huff, here. Assemblymember Nazarian, Assemblymember Bonilla, Assemblymember Chavez,
Here.
Nick Schweizer,
Here.
Cesar Diaz,
Here.
Jeffrey McGuire,
Here.
Irena Ortega.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I'd like to welcome Senator Huff to our meeting today, former State Allocation Board member, so thank you for joining us again. And then welcome to Chief Deputy Director Jeffrey McGuire, who will be sitting in as the delegate for the DGS Director. Try moving it over here. Is that better? Can you hear? Is it coming across? I don't think that it's going to work too. Is that better? Okay. Now I have to hold the microphone the whole time. And we'll let the record show that Assemblymember Bonilla has also joined us. Oh, Senator Hancock snuck in over there. Yes. So let's go ahead and start with the minutes from the January 27th and February 24th meetings. Are there any comments or questions from board members? Seeing none. Is there a motion? Okay, moved by Mr. Diaz. We have a motion? Second? Second by Mr. McGuire. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Abstentions or objections? Great. Abstention by Senator Huff. That action is approved. Lisa, if you don't mind, I'm going to skip ahead to the action items while we have a quorum. We'll go to the first action item, which is under tab 6, and that would be the Klamath Trinity appeal. Barbara? Thank you. Okay, how's that? Yeah. Great. So the Klamath Trinity School District has submitted an appeal for 5 health and safety projects. The district is a small district with just over 1,000 students, and they are located in a remote region of Northern California in Humboldt County. Over 85% of the district students are on Native American lands, and in addition, they have over 90% free and reduced lunch as well. They have some severe health and safety issues at multiple campuses within the district related to a contaminated water supply as well as some mold issues, leading to the closure of multiple facilities across campuses within the district. And on page 112 of your agenda, the staff is recommending that the board take several actions to assist the district. The request for these projects meets the health and safety requirements of the program, but there are some aspects of these projects that make it so that we cannot approve this administratively. But we do support that the board consider the following recommendations to provide some funding to help the district get the kids back into the classrooms. On page 112, recommendation 1 relates to replacement funding. The district has submitted cost estimates to repair these schools, and under the regulations of the program, they have exceeded the 50% threshold and do qualify for replacement funding. However, the state funding formula for this program does not take into account unique circumstances such as what the district is facing. Because they are very remote, the costs to do the construction are higher because they have to bring in both workers and supplies. They don't have a local pool of contractors they can work with. In addition, the climate of the area is very wet, and so they need to have special considerations when they're constructing their facilities. So the As the board has considered in the past for districts that have had historic buildings under the seismic mitigation program where it wasn't feasible for them to do replacement projects within the state funding for replacement, Klamath Trinity is requesting to use replacement funding to rehabilitate the facilities, to remove the mold and repair them for 4 of the schools. You can see them listed in the chart there on attachments D, E, F, and G. And staff does support the district's request to do this. The second recommendation relates to Jack Norton Elementary School, which is not a mold project currently, but had a contaminated water supply, and the district needed to connect into another source of water for the school. There was an issue with the DSA approval date on this, in which the district let contracts before obtaining DSA approval, but as soon as both DSA and the district realized it would require DSA approval, they worked together to quickly achieve DSA approval, and they have taken care of that. And so we would recommend that the board provide funding for the project given the circumstances. And then the third recommendation relates to 4 of the projects, 3 of them with the mold issues, and then the Jack Norton project with the contaminated water supply. Part A would provide apportionments for the projects today outside of the priority funding process. Because of the situation and having to close the schools, and then also recently in February, the district learned that multiple other facilities on their school sites have mold issues as well. So they've had to close the schools and reconfigure, and they are not in all of their facilities right now. So we are recommending that the board approve the district's request to receive immediate apportionments today so that cash can be provided to them very quickly so that they can continue on with the work of remediating the mold and also reimburse some financing that they had to take out in order to get some of the facilities usable. There is a part B on this because one of the projects for Hoopa Valley High, we're still finalizing the numbers with the district on the actual costs. So we would be asking that the board approve that in concept so that we could come back at the next scheduled board meeting with a consent item for Hoopa Valley High to take the same action and provide an apportionment for which the district could submit a fund release immediately after that future board action. With that, I can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. And I do have speakers on this item, Mindy Nat and John Ray. If you'd like to come on down, there's a microphone here. Welcome.
Hello. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Mindy Nat. I'm the council member for the Yurok tribe, and I'm coming down here to in support of this funding. We need funding for our schools. The Yurok tribe is the largest tribe in California with over 6,000 tribal members. And currently in the Klamath Trinity School District, there's 90% tribal members that are in the school or that are Native children. And so it's really important for the council to have good drinking water for our kids at Jack Norton School. There's 2 schools that are within the Yurok Reservation, and they're Jack Norton and Wichpeck. And Jack Norton, it has mold problems, and the water is contaminated, and they haven't been drinking out of it at all. And it's really important for the tribe to, be able to support our kids and make sure that our kids have a good education, just like down here in the big city. We are in a rural part of the reservation, and I feel like sometimes we get neglected and we don't get the education that we deserve. And so I just want to thank you guys all for supporting this, and so thank you.
Hi, my name is John Ray. I'm the proud superintendent of Klamath Trinity. And I just wanted to thank you for your time. Also be here to answer any questions, but I also like to publicly recognize our office staff of OPSC, Lisa Silverman, Barbara, and her staff have gone over and above to help us out and spend the hours to try and make this work. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Any comments from board members? Okay, motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. Okay, I think all in favor? Aye. Any nays? Passes unanimously. Let's move on to the next action item, which is the Santa Ana appeal.
Okay, so the next appeal that we have is from Santa Ana Unified, and this relates to a project that received funding under the Overcrowding Relief Grant Program. And this is for Henninger Elementary. And the project is complete and was going through the closeout process. And it was reported that the district had about $2.7 million worth of savings. And in this appeal, the district is requesting to retain the savings from this project. The staff, when the request came in, we did deny the request originally because the staff position is that the regulations as written do require that projects under the Overcrowding Relief Grant Program return any savings that are not spent on that particular project back to the state. And then what happens after that is that the savings goes back into the Overcrowding Relief Grant Program and it's used to fund other projects. The regulations have been in place for 8 years. Up until this point, we've had no public comment and no concerns raised. And we have had multiple districts that have remitted savings from ORG projects in the past. Santa Ana has provided a legal opinion that they believe that there is a statutory basis that would not require the return of savings. And they also have stated that the regulation doesn't state that savings needs to come back. We have evaluated the legal opinion and spoken with legal counsel and believe that the original regulation did have statutory basis and is a valid regulation. It did go through the public process. It went through the Office of Administrative Law. No comments were raised at that time with concern related to retaining savings. And then also, in the event that savings is not required to go back to the program, there are 6 projects that did not receive bond authority for the Overcrowding Relief Grant Program in the last round. The program was oversubscribed for the last round, and in a past board action, the board determined that those projects could remain on a workload list, and in the event that any funding was returned to the program, the projects could then be funded at a later date. So we do have 6 projects representing about $23 million that are waiting for funds to be used for Overcrowding Relief Grant purposes. Right now, we don't foresee any additional ORG projects fully rescinding, so the only source of funding for those 6 projects would be the return of savings to the program. In addition, we have several other programs that have regulations that do require that the return of savings go back. And those programs stem from Prop 1D when there were limited pots of funds, and the policy decision by the board at the time was to try to spread the funding for the Overcrowding Relief Grant Program, career technical education facilities, and charter school facilities, to spread those funds to as many projects as possible because it was a limited funding source. So that was the balance between requiring districts to return the savings. In the new construction program, there is the ability for districts to retain savings with the efficient and prudent use of funding. However, that funding source had more money available to it, so it's not been an issue so far. So we do believe that the regulations are valid and that they are supported by statute, and that Santa Ana and other districts would be required to return ORG savings. However, in the event that the board does choose to grant the appeal, we would also suggest that the board consider the impacts to the other projects that have already returned savings, because there are multiple districts that have returned over $7 million in savings back to the project. So from an equity standpoint, we would seek direction on what to do about the savings that have previously been returned. And then if the appeal is approved, we would also request direction on whether we should be coming back with regulations to clarify. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, should we start with hearing from the folks from Santa Ana at this point, unless there are immediate questions? Seeing none, let's go ahead and call up the Santa Ana folks. We have Alan Reesing and Rick Miller. Mr. Miller?
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Rick Miller from the Santa Ana Unified School District, and I represent the district and over 55,000 students. As has been pointed out, we have an appeal because we think that there are some other things that are at play here. We believe we have exercised purposefully fiscal prudence and stewardship which is consistent with our understanding of the California Education Code 1707.63C, which specifically says any savings achieved by the district's efficient and prudent expenditure of these funds shall be retained by the district in the county fund for expenditure by the district for other high priority capital outlay purposes. In our view, those other high priority projects are also ORG projects. We have 228 temporary mods that are still out there that need to be replaced. They're in all kinds of condition, as you might imagine, and our students are not adequately housed. This was an initiation on our part based on our understanding of the code and where this was all going, and so we would urge your support of our appeal overall. We also believe that with these shovel-ready projects that we were an original part of the ORG legislation. In fact, I think we were the poster district, if you will, at the time. Our students, over 90% of them, are free and reduced eligible. 60% of our kids are EL, and over 1/3 of our sites exceed the state's maximum site density as we do this. Going forward, we think that this is a policy decision, and it's really a statement to us as districts about where you want us to go. And it's really a statement of choice as we understand it. On the one side, we think there's a clear indication in the code that we need to have stewardship. And the stewardship then goes back to increasing the reduction of those modular units that are in our district. And I said we have 228 on the one side. On the other side, the idea seems to be to expend all available funds, and we certainly could have done that. There were choices we made to not go that direction. So that's the choice. Stewardship on the one side, expend the funds on the other side, and we thank you for your attention in this matter.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Miller. I earlier referenced Alan Reising, from Glendale Unified. Nice to see you again.
So, Allocation Board members, my name is Alan Rising. I'm the Administrator of Facilities for Glendale Unified School District. I'm here today to lend my district's support for the appeal that's currently before you from Santa Ana Unified School District. Just basically agreeing with a lot of the comments from Dr. Miller. But I did want to speak quickly to, as fiscal steward to the state and local funds that we're responsible for, I'm just a little concerned about the adoption of this policy could set up an incentive where districts wouldn't necessarily be required to be good stewards of those funds. It essentially could set up an incentive for inefficient use of those funds. By being efficient with what we do, we want to save those funds. We want to return those back to the communities and the schools that we serve to get the most use out of those funds. So we do, as a district, we would like to support Santa Ana Unified and urge the board to approve this appeal moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I also have Rana Walcott from Newhall Unified. Ms. Walcott.
Hello. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business Services for Newhall School District, and I'm actually here to urge you to vote no on this appeal. Being one of those districts that is still waiting on that list for funding. We have 2 projects on the list. We submitted back in 2013, and we have been patiently waiting in the hopes that ultimately there will be savings. That is how the program has been running all these years. Other districts have benefited from that same policy. The 2 projects in question were already completed with local bond funds, but we were only able to complete half of removing portable classrooms at one site because we have a lack of state funding. So those 2 sites are small elementary school. We're a small district. We had the fastest growing city in California in the early 90s. Lots and lots of portables. Our community, thankfully, has been supporting our efforts to get these portables off in permanent classrooms so we can return our students to good classrooms. And also in terms of site size, these 2 projects, one is about 6.5 acres, the other one slightly over 7, which both are below the recommended standard. So I would urge you to continue the policy that has been in place and to deny this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open it up for questions or comments from board members. Anyone? Yes, Travis.
First of all,
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I visited Santa Ana, and I would also like to reaffirm what the superintendent said, that the facilities that they built are very good. But also, as identified, he has some really poor facilities. In particular, I saw was a school in a very urban area. Smart. So I'd just like to recognize the fact that there is a great need at Santa Ana. And the facility that I saw was a block with the overcrowding of kids, and they didn't even have the playground, which is all cement. What I want to hear is from the staff, because there's clearly a need from Santa Ana, but I would imagine there's clearly a need throughout the state. That's why I'm a supporter of the school bond coming forward in this ballot initiative. What is the fair way to deal with this? Because we're dealing with probably needs throughout the state. What's the practice? Because there was a discussion made by the superintendent that it was their intent that they could reutilize their money. So could I have an opinion on that? What's the rule say?
Well, the way the program is currently structured, the original policy was set to make sure that need throughout the state was covered, so that was why the no savings went into effect. And when overcrowding relief grant applications come in, they are ranked on the density of the school sites, so it's not first in, first out, but there were individual filing rounds for these projects. And schools that had higher pupil densities were ranked higher, so we would go down the list in order of pupil density until we ran out of bond authority. So the policy and the way the program was structured was identified to address those schools that had the highest need.
So in that case, Santa Ana was recognized as the highest need. That's why they received the money.
For the applications that they've submitted, it was
Yes.
based project by project. So for the projects that they are planning to do or plan to use the savings for, those have not come through the program, so I don't have the answer to where those would have fit in comparison to the other applications that are outside of the bond authority.
But the money that they were allocated for the projects they did, now the return savings that come from that, it was the policy that would return to the state allocation board to be reallocated to other schools with down the pecking order, down the list?
Yes, that was the policy, and that is how the regulations read, that savings come back, and then the board took a further action when determining whether or not to close that final round when we ran out of bond authority initially. And the board decided, let's not send these applications back. Let's wait and see if savings return, because if savings return, then we can keep going down this final round. So there are only 6 projects remaining in the program. There are no further application periods because essentially the bond authority has been used up. So those projects are waiting to see what happens.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, Senator Hancock?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, it seems to me that if we were to change our policy now, we would have to go back and pay $7 million to the schools that gave their money back. That would leave even less money for the schools down on the list, right?
That's correct.
So I don't really see any way for us to do this in a way that's consistent and orderly at this stage of the game. But I am curious about section 1859.103 that seems to say districts can keep money that they save for other high priority projects. That has been there in the law, but we made a policy decision that we were not going to do that.
Well, it's in how it's worded. So the statute that guides that refers also to the need or the program for unhoused pupils. So when initially the policy was being made, because there was a reference in that same Ed Code section to unhoused pupils, ORG does not house unhoused pupils. It's a separate program that's not tied into the new construction program. So the board's broader authority to set regulations is what was used to harmonize the statute and under those two programs. So the regulation was written with statutory authority because that piece of Ed Code did not apply to ORG. There's also a few other things that can happen in new construction that are referenced there, like allowing the creation of portable classrooms, and the ORG statute specifically prohibits the creation of ORG statutes. So part of what the board does when they're setting those regulations is clarifies those points in statute. So it was not against statute initially.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hancock. Any other comments?
So, having been recycled here myself, I recall in Santa Ana was a poster child for why, we needed to have some funds like this, and they have 228 mil. We got a big voice. Told me they had too many.
To be going in and out on us. The little black ones do not.
All right, well, let me, that's just getting the minutes. But I guess I struggle with this because I know the need is in Santa Ana, and yet you have the other districts with the need also. You have rules that have been in place. Everybody went into that knowing Santa Ana benefited significantly. Other schools are still waiting in line. And so it seems that perhaps the policy is unfair. I think there's wisdom in having a policy that encourages good stewardship. And this policy that we currently have perhaps does not, but it seems like changing the policy in the middle of this process is flawed. So while it's probably too late to do anything about this, I would say going forward we have a policy that returns half the money that a school saves to themselves and the other half goes back into the pot. I don't know how we equitably divide it at this point. And that doesn't take away the very profound needs that Santa Ana has. 228 portables is a lot. And yet, other schools have been waiting patiently as well. So I think it's a no-win situation for us. We move forward, but I'd certainly like to see a policy that splits the difference and has that incentive going forward.
So we can ask staff to take a look at, that's the will of the board, we can ask staff to take a look at that for a policy to perhaps consider at a future meeting. Okay, any other comments on this item? Welcome, Mr. Nazarian. Looks like we have additional public comment, please.
Thank you. My name is Darren Waters. I'm Deputy Superintendent of the Val Verde Unified School District, which is located in Riverside County. My district is the face of every dollar that goes back to Santa Ana comes out of our ORG application. So it is the 19,900 students. We're at 83% poverty in our district as well. We have a strong need. I have a high school severely overcrowded, no parking lot because we've had to put relocatables out there. We're trying to do a high school. I think the big difference is trying to do another high school to relieve this overcrowding. This grant would help us with that. We'd have no other state participation. It's all being funded locally at this time. I think the big distinction for me is in the regular grants we have for construction modernization, we give up eligibility and we get the grants for that. ORG, there's no eligibility requirements. So there's no skin in the game, if you will. I think that's the difference of why you split the savings versus not splitting the savings, because that's the way I've always viewed that. So anyway, Val Verde Unified, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have as well. But my position would be to please support the staff's position and deny the appeal.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no additional comment? It doesn't seem like we have a motion at this time. Senator Lee?
So it takes a motion to change the staff.
Sure.
We need to clarify the action.
Okay. So if we want to have, we don't necessarily need a motion to give direction to staff to come back with a future discussion about savings going forward. So the only action item before us is the action on the appeal. We have to take an action to approve the appeal, correct? We don't need to take an action if we're not approving the appeal.
Correct. The staff action would stand.
So so if there isn't a.
So no motion means that the staff's recommendation stand?
Correct. Correct. So, if I'm not hearing a motion, so I think we'll move on. Okay, thank you, everyone. The next item is an information item, and I have a number of speakers who want us to present on this item. I understand we'll start with a short overview from the staff, and then we'll ask the folks from Fremont School District to come up. So,
Yes.
Lisa.
So we wanted to come back and follow up with the board had asked us back in January of 2016 was to provide an information item, just providing the statutory framework and how developer fees were established. And with that, on page 177 is the introduction of that conversation. But on 178, we wanted just to highlight very quickly on how level 1 was established and how the fee is set. So the fee is established on a per square foot basis and adjusts every 2 years in accordance to an inflation set. That's done by the board, and that was just done by the board recently in January. And level 2 calculation is also enacted with the school facility needs analysis in order to determine level 2. But that fee is also designed to give the district an opportunity to participate on a 50-50 basis for a new construction project. And again, a school needs analysis is necessary in order to perform. With level 3, it's the highest fee triggered. With that, you still have to walk through the needs analysis as you would in level 2. And the board would have to determine that there's no longer new construction dollars available. And that would result in the entire project being at the cost of the developer. And as far as background, the statute was enacted back in 1987 for level 1, and level 2 and 3 was set when SB 50 was enacted. And we also wanted to share with the board that it was a temporary suspension back in 2012 with SB 1016, in which there would be no action by districts that could trigger level 3. However, that suspension was lifted in the fall of 2014 when there's a few bond bills that didn't move forward. So we just want to give a program history on the statute. There's also reference in the report on page 179. The Legislative Analyst Office provided an overview of how state funds were provided through the program since 1998. And on that chart on page 179, it highlighted that $120 billion has been invested in school facilities. And with that, a good portion of those investments have come from local school bonds. So $75.2 billion was attributed to that investment, in which $35.4 billion was investment from state general obligation bonds, and $9.4 billion was an investment from the developer fees. And on page 180, we wanted just to highlight that developer fees are used for construction and reconstruction. It's not meant to contribute with ongoing facility cost like maintenance. And so with that, we also wanted just to share with the board that once the statute is enacted, once level 3 is triggered, there is no mechanism right now currently on how you end that trigger. So with that, we wanted to share with that to the board and acknowledge the report.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions from board members at this time, or folks are ready to move on to public speakers? Senator?
I have a question as to how did the temporary developer fees that were enacted a number of years ago get lifted if there's no mechanism to lift the fee? Is that a board action or a local action?
There was that statute that was enacted was SB 1016, and at the time there was a few bond bills that were being sponsored by some of the members of the board, and so with that they didn't want to move forward with the possibility of level 3 being triggered if the conversation was being had with the support of a new bond initiative at the time.
So they deliberately didn't put in a trigger to end it so that it would be impossible to get it, or it would be cumbersome? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure on what the background on that was and how they came up with a trigger, but nor did I think that we'd probably get to that environment where we would trigger it. So, yeah, that would probably have to be something that needs to be corrected at some point in time, but there is no current mechanism to shut it off.
but it was part of the bond that the voters voted on, was to have these 3 levels.
Correct.
Developer.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? Okay. Let's go ahead and start with Ms. Campbell. Is that, I have I know the folks from Fremont wanted to start, but I have a list of names here, but I'm not sure who is going to be the kind of lead-off speaker. So. Yeah. Let me just say before you get started, maybe the folks who are here representing both Fremont and Dublin, you can pick maybe 2 or 3 people to be your lead folks, and then we'll give you each a few minutes to talk, and then after that we'll just ask people to identify themselves and let us know what their view is.
Sure.
Their position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Morris. I'm the superintendent of the Fremont Unified School District, and it really is an honor. We came here very respectfully. Our bottom line message to you is we need help in Fremont. We have a very, very serious problem in our school district. Fremont, as you may know, is a high-performing district, the heart of the Bay Area, and we're home to a growing, thriving community. The challenge we face in Fremont is growing community, growing enrollment. We're here to ask for your help. We have done as a community our part. We've passed local bonds, but our school enrollment is growing. When I became the superintendent in Fremont in 2010, we had 32,000 students. Today we have 35,000 students, and by 2022 we'll be over 40,000 students. And that problem is really the result of a robust economy, a great location, and good things happening. We have the highest performing schools in the area. We do an incredible job for students, but because there's so much new development in housing, we cannot keep up with the pace of growth in the community. We have in our school district today over 2,000 students on a daily basis who are overloaded out of their neighborhood school and sent any place that we have space available. We currently are out of classrooms in Fremont. We have no space left. We had a kindergartner who enrolled earlier this week, and I had to find a classroom and open a classroom for 1 student because I haven't a seat anywhere in Fremont. We have parents driving from one end of town to the other because we don't have space. We have done our part as a community. I think the partnership that we have in the Warm Springs area, we had 3 developers who came forward and said, we understand your level 2 fee doesn't solve the problem. And we had 3 developers, Toll Brothers, Lennar, and Valley Oaks Partners, who came forward and said, we know we have to voluntarily pay more because we cannot solve the problem. There's no seats left. I really honor the 50 parents, teachers, school administrators who came here today because we are asking for help, because we do have problems in other part of town. On the other end of town, we have developers, KB Homes, DR Horton, and Brookfield, who decided to sue the district because we don't have a school to send those children to. We have a very, very serious problem. We're asking what we believe is within your authority to allow districts like Fremont to implement a level 3 developer fee. We cannot continue to ask people voluntarily to do it. It works in some cases, but not everyone is willing to give us that help. I just ask you to think about the children of our community. Work with us. We've stretched our local bond dollars as far as we can, but we have only portable classrooms and no seats left.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Desiree Campbell, board trustee, and I won't repeat everything that Dr. Morris said, but I would like to add a couple of things. He did mention that we have portable housing. We have 28% of our classrooms are relocatable housing. Our students, and our board believes that our students should be in their neighborhood schools, not outside of their districts. He mentioned that we're overloading 2,000 plus students to outside of their neighborhoods, and we believe that if by implementing the level 3 fees, it will give us an opportunity to be able to create more housing for our students. We also, I personally would like to ask that this item would come back as an action item. We have, this is the second time this item has come to this board, and each time it was an informational item. But we believe that this should be an action item. The board should take action on whether or not they want to implement the level 3 development fees for those districts that are in need of it. And you could also while doing that, create a trigger to stop it. And that this could be a stopgap for what will happen in November if the local bond. You could help us now. If the bond passes, the state bond passes, then that could be the trigger to remove the level 3 fees. But we do need your help at this time. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Crosby. I'm a school board trustee in Fremont, and we want to thank you for being willing to listen to our families today. I would like to share what it means to be a student in Fremont. We are projected to need 8 new schools to keep up with our growth. An elementary school will cost approximately $58 million to build in Fremont, and we need 5, and 2 junior highs and a high school. We will need approximately $500 million to meet our students' needs. I would like to provide to your board the matrix that Fremont Unified uses to keep track of where our students are attending schools so that we can fill every single seat. Currently, a family living by Ardenwood Elementary School may drive their 3rd grader across town every morning, past 8 other elementary schools to reach Durham Elementary, where there is a seat available in 3rd grade. The same family may also have to transport their 5th grader to a different school where there is room for a 5th grader, while still getting their junior high student to school on time. Every morning, we have 90 kindergartners from Niles area of Fremont traveling to Gomes Elementary School. 90 5-year-olds pulled out of bed a half an hour earlier to get to school instead of sleeping later and walking around the corner to a neighborhood school. This is their introduction to education. We are doing all that we can to keep clean, safe schools for our students, but we have already placed 383 portable classrooms, with more coming this summer. We are now placing portable restroom buildings because our students can't wait in line to use the restroom and get back to school in time. Though a new state bond may pass in November, we need help now. We can't wait. SB 50 dictates that when states run out of funds for school facilities, school districts may begin charging level 3 fees. The billions of dollars in school projects far outweigh the millions of dollars the state has remaining. For our students, please make the declaration that allows us to collect these funds to meet our students' needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, the name is Liz Fisher, and I'm representing the group of concerned parents and FUSD staff that have come here today. And we passed a resolution. However, most of the points in the resolution you're very well familiar with, so I'll just share a few highlights. The California Constitution finds public education is a state responsibility in Article 9, Section 5, and the state has exhausted the available school facility funds and cannot provide the state match for almost $2 billion in projects. The state's lack of school facility funds and failure to authorize level 3 mitigation fees has cost the Fremont Unified School District $11,317,734. Continued state inaction will increase the uncollected funds for school facilities. The Fremont community has supported local school facilities with a parcel tax, Measure K in 2010, and a school facilities bond measure, Measure E, of $650 million in 2014. And continued inaction by the State and Allocation Board has placed an unfair and unreasonable burden on the Fremont Unified School District and the Fremont community. So, therefore, concerned parents and teachers of Fremont hereby find and determine that we call on the state to take action to meet its constitutional responsibilities for school facilities funding to benefit our students and our communities. And hereby urge the state of California to immediately declare that the state school facility program current bond for authority is effectively exhausted for the new construction and modernization of schools affecting the majority of California school districts and to authorize school districts to impose level 3 developer fees as mitigation for new development within the state of California, including but not limited to Fremont Unified School District. Passed today by our assembly of 29, with 29 ayes, no noes, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Thank you. And I'm going to ask the rest of the folks to please identify yourself and just let us know that you're in support as well.
I would ask, I'm here to represent our entire union of over 2,000 people, Vice President, so I would ask for a minute and a half.
Very quickly. Thank you.
My name is Victoria Burbeck, and as I just stated, I am here speaking on behalf of our over 2,000 educators as the Vice President of Fremont Unified Teachers District Association. As educators, we go into our profession to assist in the development and caring of our students. Personally, as a math teacher, I also did it a little bit for the love of formulas, but I'll let our Assistant Director of Finance go into that if you would like. In representing all of my teachers, I appeal to you to do what we need in order to care for our students. We need your help because right now, in Fremont, whenever a 4-year-old enters their neighborhood school office to register and is notified that they'll be in a lottery to be waitlisted because of overcrowding, that's not caring. When they're notified over the summer that they're being sent to an elementary school they haven't heard of, it's not caring. When a 5-year-old is bused across town, past their home school, and past many other schools that are also too impacted to take him, it's not caring. When families are kept in limbo about placement and offered an opening at their home school whenever their number comes up in the middle of a school year, facing them with the choice of passing it up or setting their child back emotionally and academically by switching schools mid-year, it's not caring. We need right now to notify this board that in order to keep with the financial obligations to care for our children, we need you to make it a priority. As a teacher, all of these circumstances are heartbreaking, but I know that you can also identify that if this was your child, if this was your community, it would be equally heartbreaking. All of our educators in Fremont are in the business of caring, but we need you to please show us that you care about our students as we do by making the choice to fully fund our school development. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Antoinette Schlobaum. I'm a teacher at Ardenwood School and a parent of 2 FUSD alumni. With all due respect, we the citizens of and teachers in Fremont Unified School District request level 3 mitigation fees as required by law for new developments in Fremont and all of California. Our schools are impacted severely with 35,000 students, and over 2,000 today are overloaded. We believe that the law since 2012 requires the State Allocation Board to implement level 3 funding. Our citizens have done their fair share, passing 2 measures, the last in 2014. Through non-enforcement of level 3 fees, the State and State Allocation Board place an unfair burden on FUSD and its citizens. One of the eligibility requirements for level 3 fees is at least 20% portable teaching stations. We're at 28%. Our facilities are aging and in need of repair. They are in need of continual maintenance. Proper capital funding for facilities management ensures the fewer unnecessary emergency repairs. Our number of restrooms and student to restroom ratio is inadequate, and all of our 42 schools are out of compliance. Imposing level 3 fees is not only required by law, but it's a win-win-win for our students, our citizens, and the state. Its proper accommodations will allow us to provide students with a safe, secure, and peaceful environment where all students can get a quality education. Again, we'd like you to do what the law requires. Thank you.
Again, if the rest of the folks could just say your name and...
Good afternoon. My name is Raul Parangao. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Fremont Unified School District, and just want to say that I'm in support. So today I'd like to be able to paint the picture for you with the situation, how crucial the situation is at Fremont Unified School District. So while we agree that there is a formula in calculating the level 2 developer fee, we believe that the current formula does not align to the reality. And so just take a look at if we have a growth of 30 students in the district, that means that we would need 1 classroom to be able to house 30 students. Well, to build 1 classroom, it requires $950,000 in the Bay Area. Well, you cannot build classroom without a land, and so we have to acquire land. It requires $800,000 cost of land to be able to build one classroom. Total $1.75 million. Imagine how much level 2 developer fee we're going to generate with 30 students. It's about $560,000. You could tell that the amount of level 2 is about less than a third of the true cost of housing 30 students. We're very grateful about the local control funding formula for the restoration of the funding. However, you're aware that there is also a requirement for us to lower class size to 24:1. In our district, to lower down the class size to 24:1, we needed 84 classrooms to be able to house the lowering of the class size. At $1.75 million per classroom, it requires $147 million to house all those students with 84 classrooms. Our schools are growing. Dr. Morris mentioned that we've been growing by about 3,000 students for the last 7 years. Every year we're still growing by about 600 students every year. That's actually, next year thereafter for the next 7. In order to house 600 students that we grow every year, we require 20 classrooms. That means $35 million that we need every year. This morning, I actually left the district before we came here, and I was told that we actually have about 300 kindergarten students who are pre-enrolled that don't have room. We have 2,600 pre-enrolled students. We only have about 2,300 seats available. We don't know how to house those 300 students. I don't know about you, but if I actually tell a 5-year-old and say, enrolling into our school and say, I don't have any room for you, that keeps me awake at night. And so I urge you to actually declare the level 3 for us to be able to mitigate the problem that we have in Fremont. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Raj Salwan. I'm a former Fremont City Council member and current chair of the Fremont Planning Commission. Real quickly, I just want to say that Fremont has been a model community. We have designed 4 PDAs with a new BART station. We have done our part. We've been one of the first cities to dedicate affordable housing, our boomerang funds. And we have this need for more schools. And the city is doing everything that they can, but we definitely need your support to get level 3 fees so we can build new schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Sonia Khan. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and with specialty in ICU trauma and adolescent medicine. I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the California Chapter Council on School Health. I have a letter here with the medical and mental health consequences outlined for these students because of the saturation of their facilities. In the interest of time, I'll submit it in writing if you don't want to hear it right now.
Thank you.
I'm Bob Wykowski. I'm the state senator for the Fremont Unified School District. I represent these children plus everybody else, and I urge the board to take action to move Fremont into the level 3 funding.
Thank you, Senator.
Good afternoon. My name is Hill Ng. I'm a regular Fremont person. I just want to tell you that in addition to all the classrooms, Fremont schools are struggling with inadequate sport facilities, music facilities, labs. The entire infrastructure of our schools are under tremendous amount of pressure. My high school was built for 1,200 students. In about 5 years, it is expecting 3,000 students. And those are the type of problem that our schools and the people of Fremont are struggling with. We need level 3 fees so that we can get some extra dollars from the developers. We need all the help that we can get. I feel that, speaking as a regular citizen, I feel that the people of Fremont have done everything we can. And we are coming here because we really, really need the help. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Ipsha Patel, and I'm here representing the Fremont Unified School District. I go to Hopkins Junior High School, and I wanted to talk about all the kids that couldn't actually get into the school. So there are many kids who have come from a few schools all around, like Chadbourne and Gomes and stuff. But some of those kids couldn't get in because there isn't enough space. So we need to build some more schools so people can get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, we're from Dublin, and there's 4 of us, and we will be brief. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Ortega and State Allocation Board. My name is Megan Rouse, and I am Vice President of the Dublin School Board. Thank you for hearing us today. We'd like to thank Assemblymember Susan Bonilla for her support and the time she has spent working on this critical issue with us. Thank you. We'd also like to thank Senator Steve Glazer and Assemblymember Catherine Baker, who was here earlier, and her staff, their staffs, for their advocacy on our behalf. We must be familiar faces by now to you. We are here again to advocate for Dublin students and all students, and we will continue to do so until we get the relief that we need. Please allow me to introduce Board President Dan Cunningham.
Thank you, Megan. I just want to make sure the body understands where Dublin is and what our circumstances are. We're a high-performing district like Fremont, the second fastest growing city in the state of California, which is bringing a lot of kids to our schools. We've doubled in size in the last 10 years, and we expect to increase another 50% in the next 5. The fast pace of growth in Dublin has created demand for an additional 5,000 seats in our schools in the next decade, in buildings we don't own and on land we don't have. Since that time, the state has, since the last time the state allocated funds to Dublin, we have added more than 2,700 students. New homes are being bought and sold, and students continue to come to our schools, campuses continue to fill, and our city council can't even use schools as a reason not to approve a housing project because of SB 50. Our community is justifiably frustrated as they see the conditions begin to change in our high-functioning school district. Plain and simple, we need more school classrooms. Right now, we are not sure how we are going to be able to afford it. We wait for tens of millions in funds due for schools we have already built, and we face the prospect of having to build additional schools without state funds. The issue is undermining our educational mission, the confidence of our community, and frankly, our ability to pass future bonds. It is doing damage that we believe is completely unnecessary. The situation has placed an unfair and unreasonable burden on the Dublin school and community. And finally, and this is the most important thing, it's impacting our students. You heard it from Fremont. The situation is becoming similar in Dublin. It has stretched our resources as a district and moved our focus away from educational mission to serve each and every student every day. And it will have more far-reaching impact going forward if we don't find a remedy today. This isn't hyperbole, it's the hard truth. And now, Amy Miller.
Hi again, Amy Miller, Board Trustee in Dublin Unified. The immediate action of this body is very vital to our district and Fremont District and probably many other districts. We've done all of the right things, everything that we can possibly do. We've worked to pass 3 local bond measures with a 4th one on the ballot for this June of 2016. And as generous as our community has been, we know we cannot realistically maintain our facilities growth solely on our residents' pocketbooks. We have worked closely with our city on agreements that have allowed us to obtain land for 2 school sites at no cost. We have entered into mitigation agreements with developers on multiple projects. We've passed a resolution supporting the state bond measure. We've conducted an extensive facilities master planning process to accurately assess our needs, a process that involved more than 50 meetings and 1,000 stakeholders. Our needs for facilities are over $500,000. We rallied more than 1,000 residents to write letters to the governor's office asking for a change in the way that school facilities are currently funded. We delivered those letters to the governor's office today. We have met with the CBIA and the local builders in efforts to maximize the contributions that developers make to our district. And as you all know, we have spent the past few months advocating here, in front of this board and with the legislators, to come up with solutions that can bring relief to our district. We have worked with local representatives, Senator Glazer and Assemblymember Baker, and we have met with others outside of our district, seeking to build support with districts like Fremont experiencing similar issues. We've done our part. We now need the state to do theirs and meet their constitutional responsibilities to provide school facilities funding for our students and our community. We hope that after you listen to our superintendent, Dr. Hankey, talk about a very reasonable solution that we think we've come up with, that you'll consider agendizing that for your May meeting. And I just want to give a special thank you to Assemblywoman Susan Bonilla. She's given a lot of time and energy and thought helping us work through this issue and come up with a reasonable solution. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. I'm Steve Hankey. I'm the superintendent in Dublin. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. We agree with the sentiment that has been expressed from Fremont and from the trustees that you just heard of, that the actual elements of SB 50, the conditions of SB 50, do not meet our needs. We have a serious problem facing our school district. Overcrowding issues, you've heard about those, are definitely in Dublin as well. We clearly are facing an extreme hardship issue. We face severe program alterations, significant numbers of diversions, and the potential of double sessions and other things if we cannot resolve this issue. We have done absolutely everything that is required and everything that we can locally. These local efforts have just not been enough. They've just not been enough. We are proposing an alternative, a remedy to this dilemma that we are facing. The remedy that we are proposing the board consider is an additional board regulation under 1859. This alternative, this remedy, would do the following. It would define extreme financial hardship, like districts in Dublin and like districts like Fremont, and I'm sure there are others like ours. This proposal would also provide hardship assistance in the form of a loan from a budget line item from this year's or next year's budget, 16-17, or from the pooled money investment fund. The repayment of that loan would come potentially from the bond measure if it is passed in November. Now, we have taken the time, as has been mentioned, to work very closely with the Building Industry Association, both here in Sacramento and locally, and we certainly pledge to continue to do so. We are especially grateful again for the efforts from Assemblymember Bonilla. She's been very gracious, she has been very responsive, she has been very, very helpful. We want to thank you for that. And we are also understand that she has some comments that she would like to make relative to this item. And I want to repeat the ask once again. The ask of the board this afternoon is that you agendize, you review this potential regulation and agendize this for the May 25th meeting. And I thank you. Ms. Bonilla.
I'm Steve Harmon with Senator Steve Glazer's office, and just here to express his support for this proposed amendment.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the public. I know that's a long drive, and were you guys in that school bus parked outside? Okay, well, you get bonus points for having no air conditioning on the ride up here. But thank you so much for coming and speaking before us. This is an issue that has been stated that I've been working with the folks in Dublin and Fremont on. I just passed out a copy of some proposed regulations that have been drafted up with the help of Tom Duffy, and wanted to make the formal request that we put them on the agenda for the May 25th meeting. I believe that in the time between today and May 25th, there could be some very productive conversations with the California CBIA building industry around this. Gives us a place to work from with the builders as well. You know, in a nutshell, I think you already heard a great summary from Superintendent Hankey on what is trying to be crafted here as a solution. Basically a loan that would be repaid, but would be an emergency measure to really help these districts that find themselves in the middle of a crisis. And the details are all outlined for you there, and that would be my request now, that I would seek board support to actually put these proposed financial hardship regulations on the agenda for the May 25th meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bonilla. Let's go ahead and hear from Mr. Lyon, and then we'll open it up.
Yes, good afternoon. Richard Lyon on behalf of the California Building Industry Association. To the issue that Assemblymember Bonilla raised and Dr. Henke, we would encourage the board to move this forward at the appropriate time. We think the idea of an interim funding proposal pending the passage of the bond in November that addresses needs of growing districts who, as Dr. Henke said, has done everything that they've been required under law to do, to come up with their local match. The problem here, and it's the problem that permeates the discussion not only of the interim financing issue but of the level 3 issue, is that it's been 10 years since we've had a state bond, and it's been 10 years since the state has been fully active in the partnership of financing school facilities. And as a result, we're forced to have to deal with these kind of marginal responses when the better effort here is for all of us to get behind the bond and ensure its passage. That said, this interim funding proposal has value. I think it's an important thing for the board to consider. I know a proposal has been distributed. I don't know that we want to live and die by the specific language on it right now, but directing the staff at the appropriate time to go through the rulemaking process so that we can all engage on an emergency basis so that we can get this up and running, because there isn't that much time between now and November, and there are needs that need to be addressed. So we would encourage the board to move forward with this. And then finally, on the level 3 issue, we're very sensitive to what Fremont and Dublin have brought here today. I heard this 20 years ago, and I heard it from more than just 2 districts in the Bay Area. I heard it statewide from almost 1,000 districts, and that's why we put the program together almost 20 years ago, the shared partnership, and it's been very, very successful. $130 billion when you calculate state bonds, local bonds, and builder contributions by either fees, community facility districts, or master mitigation agreements, and housing about 4.5 to 5 million kids is a measure of success by anybody's standards. We want to continue that program. We have qualified a $9 billion K community college bond for the November ballot. It is qualified for the ballot. It will be on the ballot, and we believe that it will pass. And we believe that that once that happens, these issues on the natural will go away. If, heaven forbid, the bond doesn't pass, then the discussion around level 3 and shifting financing obligations would be ripe, but it is not ripe today. And it's not ripe because dollars continue to exist in the new construction account, and the state board continues to approve apportionments. So the statutory trigger that would authorize level 3 hasn't been pulled. That said, we all need to get behind the bond as the solution to the problem here. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions, but thank you for the opportunity to address the board.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Lyon. I do want to make one comment about the timing of the issue. Having just received it today, I'm not going to speak to the merits of the proposal, but my understanding is that there would need, as Mr. Henke mentioned, need to be an appropriation, a specific item in the budget to actually provide the funding that would be necessary for a loan program. And I don't think that there would be resolution to that issue by the May SAB meeting. So I'm not sure that from a technical perspective, it makes sense to try to agendize this again for a month when the budget discussions would not be complete by then. I'm not sure that we could do anything more besides have the same conversation in May. So I'll start with that, and if any of the other members of the board want to make any comments.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the timing either. Let me say, I fully appreciate the problem. If we made a finding, however, that there are in fact no more bond monies available because the monies, we have a list that exceeds the amount of money that we have carefully husbanded to give away, in the remaining time, we could make a level 3 finding and move on that way, couldn't we?
That analysis, I think we might be able to have that analysis before we would be able to have a conclusion to the budget issue by the summer. So, I mean, I'm open to what other board members.
I mean, I would be very loath to set up a loan program with no money to pay it back.
Right.
So, and I don't know how we set up a loan program for some districts and not everybody. So it would have to be a very large loan program. Now, if we set up a loan program with the finding that should the bond not pass, we would immediately trigger level 3. That would give a path forward for districts to pay back the loan. Otherwise, it doesn't seem like a path forward. It's just
Well, I don't think we can really have an adequate discussion on it because we haven't had it to consider, and we haven't had a staff analysis. I think what I'm requesting is that we actually have a staff analysis of these proposed regulations. And maybe I could ask staff to speak to timing. If you were to come back in May, I mean, maybe we need to have a meeting sooner than May 25th. Could you speak to the timing of how long these steps would take in order to actually change the regulations? If everybody decided after your analysis and they have a chance to read them that they wanted to do that.
Well, regulations are submitted on a quarterly basis, so I mean, we've actually have workload currently on the 90-day workload, and so we've got those actions that we plan to move forward in May. So we are working currently on those items, and we would probably need another opportunity to continue to review it and weigh out the legal analysis. So I think we still need a lot more time than the May deadline.
And I think I want to make clear what I'm raising about the budget issue and the appropriation. Having a meeting earlier than May is not going to solve that problem. The issue is if the staff come back with an analysis in May, I can assume that a piece of the analysis will be there needs to be an appropriation to create a loan program. So we could have the conversation again in May, but we wouldn't be any further in advancing the proposal when the budget hasn't been resolved by that point. It seems to me that the creation of a loan program that would require a budget line item has to inherently be part of the budget process, and the SAB regulation can't drive that. It would have to be part of budget discussions. So that's the issue I'm raising about having the staff provide some analysis of this draft regulation. We wouldn't be able to move any further forward unless there was actually a budget issue.
Well, you might not be able to take action on it, but it would give the board members the opportunity to actually review it and discover whether they thought this was even a good way forward. If we just wait, are you proposing waiting into June?
Well, my preference would be to wait until we saw whether the budget included a line item that would then trigger the need for this regulation. The regulation is not necessary unless you have a budget item that creates the loan program. At which point we could the staff would be responding to the budget item and presenting a proposed regulation. I don't think that it makes sense to have a regulation proposed prior to having the dollars appropriated in the budget.
So do you think there will be something, are you implying then that there will be some action in the budget?
I'm implying that there will be budget negotiations. I think it's for you and the other proponents of the proposal to pursue that through that process. It's certainly not the administration's proposal or anything I suspect we would be supportive of at this time.
Well, yeah, I assumed that too, but I guess if the board, I mean, you said it is our advocacy that would make something happen in the budget. That would be the point of discussing it in May so that we would all be in agreement, or at least the majority of the board would be in agreement to do that advocacy as a budget item.
I guess I would question whether the board would be doing the advocacy as part of the budget process. Certainly any of the legislators can be doing that advocacy and the members of the public, but I'm not suggesting that the board would be advocating a proposal through the budget process.
Well, I don't know. I think if the board took a had a discussion. I just don't, I think we need to actually have the information, have the discussion, or what we're really doing is you know, pushing this down the road. I don't know if you want to recognize Mr. Duffy.
Mr. Duffy.
Madam Chair, members, is this on? Okay, thank you. If I may be able to help, Tom Duffy, and I am assisting in this endeavor with the Dublin Unified School District. I think the conversation that you're having is something that is valid. And let me just give you a little bit of background about the thinking, Madam Chair. You're correct, I think, that the line item is something that would be critical to this. And that is something that you don't control as a body. But we have had discussions with members of the legislature about this, and we are continuing those discussions. And so the request really is to agendize this item so that we could have full-on discussion, very much as Bonilla has talked about, so that all of you could talk about these issues and potentially Senator Hancock answer the issues that you brought up. And
The level 3 issue that we could do right away, couldn't we?
But on this specific request to ask the board to agendize this so the discussion could continue and we could then report back to you whatever progress we are having, and I know you'll be watching that as well with this request for the line item. And we know that this is a significant ask. We have included in this document the proposal that we could look also to the Pooled Money Investment Fund. The Pooled Money Investment Fund, the AB 55 loan mechanism, has been in place for some time. It became dormant when the Department of Finance asked all of the state agencies to not approve bond funding after we went into the collapse of 2008, and that was in December. That mechanism is in place, and part of the question would be, well, where do those funds come from? I think that's part of the discussion. So what we want is to discuss a solution to a real problem, and that is a funding shortfall for districts that through no fault of their own are not able to move forward with projects, or for districts that have to borrow from future projects to be able to take care of projects today where they were anticipating state funding because of the limits that are imposed by law through SB 50 and the other mechanisms that are there that really constrain school districts that are trying to deal with the growth issues that you've been hearing today. So the request really is a continuation of this discussion with greater detail, and then we can report back to you any progress that we may be having on this issue of a line item in the budget.
So, Senator Hancock, I'm going to get back to your question. Assemblymember Bonilla, I want to say, is it your desire to have an action item in May that would take action on the proposed regulation? Because that's where I feel that it is premature for us to be able to act on a regulation that would implement something that hadn't been approved in the budget yet. So
I'm very happy to work with you as long as we're able to actually have the discussion. I understand your concern. I feel it's very important for us to be responsive in May to have the discussion about an actual solution. If that means we have to take an action at a later date, I understand that, but I don't want to just see us not address this in May. It is time sensitive, and I think we need to have a full discussion with the full board.
So perhaps Senator Liu and I can work on.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
It concerns me that these two school districts are not the only ones that are suffering from overcrowding or just in excess of this whole picture here in California. And I feel inadequate to make a decision like this unless I know what's going on, statewide.
Right. No, and this is not only for these two. It would not only apply to them.
Yes, I understand this. And yes, but I feel uncomfortable about getting to a point of approving something, not going into any kind of detail as to, one, where's the money coming from?
Well, that would be the point of the meeting in May. That's what I'm trying to do, is let us find out all that stuff.
But I'm happy to work with the chair and
Okay.
we'll see.
Okay, so we can work on bringing something in May that would be, perhaps what it would be a preliminary review of what the proposal is from staff, with perhaps a number of issues that would have to be addressed if such a proposal were to go forward through the budget process. Okay, and let's then return to Senator.
Or we can just pull that trigger.
I mean, I think that should be part of the discussion.
Yep.
I mean, it's in the law. We have it there. Why are we doing a roundabout discussion of trying to get a loan fund to cover every district in the state of California when there's a clear legal pathway to making a finding that would free up districts that wish to go ahead with level 3.
Okay, so
I'd like to see it happen.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. So, Senator Hancock, that's a request to have an action item on the level 3 developer fees.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from board members on that item? Okay. Is there any other public
I
comment?
have a question, just a point
Yes.
of clarification. Maybe I misunderstood it. Prior to this discussion, we had a presentation on the fees 1, 2, and 3. And it was my understanding when I was reading it, it's the first time I really paid attention to it that much, frankly. There's a series of gates and steps before you can file for level 3. Are we at the position right now, does this board have the authority to go to level 3? Have we hit all those gates? I thought if we had a portion.
I think that's exactly what would be part of the analysis on an action item on this
No,
question.
but it was in the report today.
Information. It's an
Pardon?
information item. It was an information item as being presented with no action.
I know it's no action, but as far as the definition of going into level 3.
I think today's information item provided the statutory framework for how the decision is made of whether you can trigger the level 3 fees. I don't think that it included the analysis of whether or not we've made that,
Okay.
if we're there. That's what an action item would look like, is providing the analysis of whether or not the trigger could be pulled statutorily. Please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Susie Lara. I'm a school board member for Beaumont Unified School District in Riverside County. And as I sit here and listen about these two school districts, I'm sitting in fear of the same thing for our district. And so it is a statewide problem, and it really is an issue for districts that are in a growth mode. We just really don't know how we're going to pay for all these facilities. And we really want to be able to provide the best facilities for our students and what's best for them. So I'm sad to hear that Fremont has students going across their community to go to school and things like that. Double sessions, those things are nightmares for families. And so I just really want you to take into consideration that we're here for families, and we're here to support their families and their kids. And our focus should always be the kids. And so I just hope that some resolution can be made to this, because I think that developer fees are important. And I go back and forth on the level 3 because I know what the impact is for developers and things like that. But the developers come in and have an impact on our communities hugely. And so it's a tough call, but I really think that we need to do something to house our kids. It's only right for them. They deserve to have a good education, and that's what we really want to do. And I'm sure every school district in California wants to provide what's best for their students. So I just want to say that I would really support seeing this another discussion in May. I would really like to come back and be a part of that.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's attended today. Thank you. Any other public comment? We do have another, Senator Lee.
I just, maybe instead of a formal meeting, we could have a workshop. To be more,
Okay.
This might be the only one that works.
Okay, right. I think it might be helpful, instead of having a formal meeting about this, to kind of lay the cards on the table in a workshop, to have more informal and invite the public to hear what they have to say, or, just think about that right now, okay?
Okay, thank you, Senator Liu. We do have one additional action item before we lose members, the consent agenda. If we could return to the consent agenda. Lisa, you want to tell us what's on that?
Yeah, consent agenda is ready for your approval.
Okay. Any, moved by Ms. Bonilla, second by Mr. Diaz. Any public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. That's approved unanimously. And we'll let Lisa.
We have just 2 information items, no action required by the board, and just provide the board an update on the executive officer statement. We just want to remind school districts that we have a certification round coming up, so those folks who have an unfunded approval, they're eligible to submit that, and that's May 11th through June 9th. And we also wanted to provide the board an update that in the consent agenda there was a design fund for seismic that was provided tonight for $400,000 for Maple School District. And just an update on the priority fundings apportionments that the board took action on in February. That was $81 million allocated to school districts, and at this point in time, there's a deadline looming of May 24th, and we have received the fund release request for over $70 million, so we're making some great progress there, and there's only several districts that are currently that we've been in communication with to ensure that they come into the door with the fund release request. And we also want to provide the board an update on the priority funding apportionments for career tech education projects. There was a deadline of April 14th, and the districts had to come in with not only the CDE approval and the DSA approval in order to access, or the next step of accessing the funds. And out of the 10, we only had 1 that unfortunately didn't perfect, so we just want to give the board an update. And we'll be tracking some updates in the future as far as the deadlines for the September projects. And we also want to share with the board the next meeting, May 25th.
All right. Any other comments from board members? Any additional public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll be adjourned.